Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon of the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich, who is covering the Capitol for over 30 years.
That's right, and I'm still alive to talk about it. I'm covering the Capitol more years than our guest is old.
Wow.
Senator David Carlucci, welcome to the Jewish View. Welcome back.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And
I like the studio.
No, thank you.
Some nice improvements. Yes.
So I'm 37 years I'm at the Capitol.
Oh wow! So you do have me beat. I just turned 36.
Okay, there you go.
Yes. Wow. Surprise. You don't look you don't look a day over 40.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was 3 when I started.
Nice.
But I like the weapons, and they used to come in with their
Wow.
father.
So 37 years.
No, 37 years.
So 1980.
80, 79, 80.
Wow.
It was my first interview was with Nelson Rockefeller when they cut the ribbon on the Empire State Plaza in 1978. And
who were you working for at the time?
Well, WCDB, the U Albany campus radio station, WAMC, and then I started in radio after that. I mean, that was just after you interview Nelson Rockefeller.
Yeah, right.
You got to stick with it, right?
Yeah. Huh.
But
wow.
Hugh Carey years, the last few years of Hugh Carey I covered, and then all of Mario Cuomo and Pataki and.
Yeah, I was talking to the PBS executive director now, a new person's in that role, and we were talking about the show that used to be aired.
Albany.
Inside Albany, yeah. And so I saw some clips of that, but a lot of it is not in digital form.
Right.
So I was asking him to get that out there so geeks like myself can watch that and see it online, and I think it's a history that's really hidden.
Well, I got to tell you, you'll see a lot of cutaway shots with me.
Yeah.
Well, there's one that WMHT does about the Capitol and the history. It was a court battle, and it ended with a court battle with Hugh Carey and the South African Springboks rugby match, and there was a big court case at the Court of Appeals that it ended. So as they're coming out of the Court of Appeals to talk to the media, I'm in the background there.
Okay.
And Bill Lambden, who was a Channel 13 reporter, says, "How long have you been doing this?"
Wow.
Because he saw me in that picture, and that was from 1979.
Wow.
So that was...
yeah, so you've been a witness to a
You
lot of
write
history.
a book already.
Well,
That's it, yeah.
I really want to. I got a lot of stories to tell,
Yeah.
Anyway,
In any case, back to Rockland County.
Rockland County, and you have Ossining and Westchester.
Yes,
in
I've
the
got
district.
Rockland, and I got parts of Rockland and parts of Westchester.
Right.
So it's a great
But
district.
the only part is
Munsey's.
Ossining, right?
Ossining, yeah, the town of Ossining. So I have 4 towns in my district.
Right,
It's the town
Clarkstown,
of
Ramapo,
Orangetown,
and
Ossining.
Ossining.
Yes,
But
And-
Muncie Spring Valley is part of it too.
that's right. Yeah, so that's in the town of Ramapo.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's funny, the geography and all that, the line. So it's kind of a compact district, which is nice. It's not a 35-minute drive. You can get to any part of the district, which is nice.
I'm sure you'd love to have a bridge that goes over.
Well, that's why the
to
Tappan Zee
Ossining.
Bridge. So I represent where the Tappan Zee Bridge is. So it's an amazing project that's coming along.
So since you represent the Tappan Zee Bridge,
Yes.
let me ask you this, because I've asked the governor this question also. Do you think they should change the name, the Governor Malcolm Wilson Tappan Zee Bridge?
It's there's so many important things with the bridge, right? And I've kind of stayed away from the name of the bridge because every group wants to name the bridge after their respective group.
But shouldn't it stay as the Governor Malcolm Wilson Tappan Zee Bridge? That's what it was named?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the history in terms of why it was even named that.
Well, because they were naming all the Hudson River bridges at the time.
Okay.
And the one that goes between Newports and Poughkeepsie, the Kingston Rhinecliff Bridge.
Okay.
They're all named. Hamilton Fish is one of them is named for him, and they've all been named. So they named Malcolm Wilson because he was from Westchester County.
Yeah, he was an assemblyman, then lieutenant governor.
Right.
The interesting thing is that when you look at the history, right, of the Thruway and the Tappan Zee Bridge, I mean, someone that would deserve the credit would be Governor Dewey. Because he was really the one that was pushing for this superhighway, and it's an interesting. There we go. Yeah, so it's an interesting history, and what I found most interesting is that right now the Tappan Zee Bridge, it's built in one of the widest spans of the river. It's 3 miles long at that span, and you say, well, why did they choose to build the bridge here at this point? Does it make the most sense or whatever? Do you know why?
Tell me.
Well, it's interesting because it was the Port Authority, right, was an existing authority at the time, and their geographic boundaries is a 25-mile radius around the Statue of Liberty. So in order to get full control for the State Thruway Authority, to have control on the tolls and everything there, they had to be just outside that. So right now, the Tappan Zee Bridge is about 800 feet north of where the Port Authority's jurisdiction ends.
That's interesting. I didn't.
Otherwise, if it would have been under the Port Authority control.
That's right. So tolls would be shared and all of that. So it's an interesting history. And I bring that up because it speaks to the fact of, wow, these political boundaries really aren't always in the best interest of residents. And I think that's true today. You look at, we just mentioned those bridges. You look at the Thruway Authority, right? The Thruway Authority runs and maintains the Tappan Zee Bridge. Go just north to the Bear Mountain Bridge or to the Newburgh Beacon Bridge, and those are regulated and governed by the Bridge Authority.
Right.
It's kind of silly. And really an interesting point is that the Bridge Authority, right, where the Newburgh Beacon Bridge is, that connects to Route 84, right? So you can drive on 84 all the way from Pennsylvania to Connecticut, right? But when you get to the Newburgh Beacon Bridge and you pay that toll, that goes to the Bridge Authority. Yet the whole 84 is governed by the Thruway Authority. So it's this balkanization of authorities, I think, in terms of what we should be focused on is the most efficient infrastructure at the most effective price, and having these authorities really work together to do that.
Synergy of services.
Exactly.
Shared services. You should tell the governor to follow his example.
Well, I've put in legislation it's controversial because people are like, wait a second, you want to merge the authorities? Oh my goodness. But what my bill does,
But the governor should be all for it.
I would say so. In his
Right.
budget, you see things where he talks about shared services, and this would be a good example for it. Now, and I'm not saying merge the authorities overnight, right? I understand
right,
it
Takes time.
But there are simple things that we could do now, like shared services, shared capital projects.
I'm
a
going to
whole
bring
bunch of
that up
things.
when the governor talks about this. I'm going to bring this to the Conference of Mayors and to the Association of Counties and to the Association of Towns. I'm going to bring this up to him and say, why don't you start in your own backyard?
It's a
and lead by
fascinating, when you look
example.
at these authorities, it's a fascinating study. Now, the Port Authority was one of the first authorities in the nation, right? But these other authorities that formed, really, it's like this shadow government,
Well,
where it's
the
like,
Thruway Authority should have gone away in 1986 because the tolls should have come off. It was a 30-year bond, and
There we
that's
go.
what created 56 to 86. And Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the U.S. Senator, was all in favor of getting rid of the Thruway Authority. But they
well, and
needed
you're
for
exactly
bonding.
right. The authorities are supposed to only last as long as that payback schedule goes. But that hasn't been the history, and it hasn't been the case. They live on. And taxpayers really don't have as much of a say. The residents don't have as much of a say. There's not too many people accountable to the public. And that's part of the problem that I have with these authorities in general. It's time to really revisit them and see, are they really serving the purpose? Now, hey, the Tappan Zee Bridge project, I couldn't be happier with its progress. Of course, I have concerns, but overall, a project of this magnitude to be built, and now it's on time, it's on schedule.
Under budget.
Under budget,
Really?
which is amazing, right? That's the first thing. Really, it's like, wait a second, no, that's not
When's
not
it supposed
government.
to be finished?
Well, the first span is supposed to open by next year.
Yeah. So there's instead of these two spans being connected,
Right.
like the current bridges, these are two separate spans.
Right.
Okay. So one of the legislators I spoke to said, well, we could name each span
Oh,
after
wow.
a different person.
There we go. Now you're
So
getting
one
creative.
span could be the Malcolm Wilson
Yeah.
span or bridge, and the other could be for
Oh,
someone else.
you'd be fascinated. I mean, there are a bunch of bills that have been introduced for a multitude of different parties. All have a good reason, and so I've kind of stayed away from that. My effort right now has been beyond what we talk about, trying to consolidate some of these agencies.
Okay.
It's the affordability, right? We could have this beautiful bridge,
Right.
but if we can't afford to cross it, that will crush our
That's what I
economy.
was going to say,
Well-
how much is going to cost?
So right now, we've got a toll freeze on the whole thruway system that we were able to implement in last year's budget. And so until 2020, there'll be no increase on the tolls, on the tolls on the thruway. The problem with that is 2020 will be here before you know it, and we've got to be proactive. So Some of the things I've worked on is, first, I would like to see a resident discount for Rockland and Westchester residents for being the host of this bridge. Now, I cross it multiple times a day when I'm in the district. I've got offices on both sides of the river. But this is important because if you dissuade people from wanting to cross that bridge, it'll absolutely crush our economy, meaning less people go and shop, meaning less sales tax revenue, meaning less businesses doing well. So the resident discount is important. On top of that, the issue of toll evasion. We have an issue where we're losing millions of dollars a year because people are simply not paying the tolls.
Really, I didn't know so much.
Yes.
Really, they really get, I mean, with the cameras? And
Well, here's the problem, right? Right now, if you were to jump a turnstile, let's say in New York City subway, right, you will be sent to Rikers Island. They will arrest you.
Really? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
There's no criminal
For $2.
penalties. Yeah, but they take it
They're
very
tough,
seriously,
yeah.
yeah. And rightfully so, because you have to have that order, or people are just not paying and jumping the turnstile where the next person, has to pay it. It's just not right. And so that I think they have a good policy. Maybe taking them to jail might be a little extreme, but I bring up that example because if you jump a toll, let's say, there's no criminal penalty. So what's happened for years is the Thruway Authority, and other authorities too, but the Thruway Authority particularly, you rack up bills. We have examples. I have one example of one person with $28,000 in unpaid tolls. So they just bill it. Businesses taking advantage of this, knowing, hey, this is an expenditure they don't have to pay. So what we're doing now is we have a law on the books that if you are a chronic toll evader, it allows for a mechanism where the Department of Motor Vehicles can suspend your vehicle registration. So really trying to clamp down on that. The other thing is an interstate agreement or interstate compact, as well as with Canada, where we can go after toll evaders in other states, and they can go after our residents too if they're not paying tolls in those states. So those are some important things that I think we really need to do moving forward.
Well, that's interesting because the tolls, I mean, if you have a toll booth, you have someone in the toll booth and they're going through.
Well,
You gotta
now
stop
we've moved
into
to a
paper.
cashless system.
Cashless system, but this is what you're talking about before the cashless system.
Well, even before the cashless system, you
People
have
were
people that
even-
would tailgate, right, if you have the thing. It's amazing. But the more chronic is where they would just go through the Easy Pass, right? So if we have Easy Pass, we're going to abide the speed limit because we don't want to lose our Easy Pass.
So the non-Easy Pass
People were just
customers
going through.
would just go through the Easy Pass lane?
Right.
And then a picture would
A
be
picture we
taken.
taken, sent a bill, just ignore it. The most
And
of the
there's no-
recourse. The recourse was they turn it over to a bill collector.
Really?
Yeah. So people got wind of this and they said, hey, if I'm going to choose which bills I'm going to pay, this is the last on the list.
Wow, and it's
And-
only like $5.
$5 on the Tappan Zee Bridge, but you'll see, and then trucks are different. So some of these big companies too
Yeah.
were evading the system. We found some companies like hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid tolls. So they're ripping off people, the hardworking people,
Yeah.
and a toll is a regressive fee, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you make $30,000 a year or $30 million a year, you got to pay the same toll. So it's a regressive fee, it hurts middle-class families the most, so that's why we've got to make sure that price does not become inhibitive, because it starts to eat away at the buying power for middle-class
Well,
families.
for me, when I come down from Albany to New York City, I take the Taconic to the Sprainbrook,
Oh,
to
okay.
across Westchester, and well,
You don't want to go
Cross County.
to the senators.
Yeah,
And
come on,
when
come on
I
over the
told
Tappan
the
Zee
governor
Bridge.
this, and when I told the governor how I go down to the Cross County and then the Major Deegan and the FDR and then over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I don't pay any tolls. And he says, if you broadcast, this is Mario Cuomo,
Yeah.
if you
Oh.
broadcast this, I'm going to have the state police following you and on your tail every time to
Oh,
give you
wow.
a ticket.
So you avoided all that.
So I avoid the toll. I haven't paid a toll in a long time. I
Oh,
mean, I
well, but you're
You're
doing it
ruining the
legally.
New York
You're doing
State
it legally.
economy over here.
Yeah, but you're not going through a toll, not paying.
No,
it.
no, I
That's a different
understand,
thing.
but still, I mean, there are routes that you could take that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
just as fast, and you don't require paying a toll. And,
Yeah.
and I don't mind going a little slower and taking an extra 20 minutes to get to my destination.
Yeah, hey.
You know,
You're
so
broadcasting
You have
to
to
the
share
world
these
now.
routes.
I know,
over
right?
here. You're
Yeah.
telling
Put that on your
everybody.
blog.
I have, you know. So
Stay
anyway,
tuned. You'll get to see it.
that's right. Stay tuned, right?
You get a deal.
And you are chairman of the Consumer Protection Committee.
Yes,
And you're a Democrat in the Senate.
yes.
How does that work? That you're a Democrat and a chairman of a committee?
Well, the Consumer Protection Committee it's pretty broad, and it's got. Today we had a committee meeting.
But the Senate is controlled by the Republicans.
Right.
So how is it that they give up one of
Well,
my
we've been
committee
working,
assignments.
I'm part of the Independent Democratic Conference, and what we've done is we've really been independent. We're Democrats, progressive Democrats, and we say, look, we've got to be able to work with Republicans, work with Democrats to get issues addressed, get results, get things done. And as you know from covering the Capitol for 37 years, I've been here for 7 years, and when I got elected in 2010, this place was totally dysfunctional. Had a real bad reputation, couldn't get bills passed because of this just political divide.
You were saying, what did I get myself into?
Well, I knew what I was getting into, and I said, look, I'm going to run and change up the status quo and get and deliver results. People at that time were really suffering. The economy was really doing bad. Unemployment rate was high. But hey, how do we work together to get stuff done? So right now the Republicans have a majority, right? They have the 32 votes they need to control the Senate. So what we're doing is we're saying, look, we're going to be independent and work with Republicans where we can and work with Democrats where we can to deliver results.
And there are 8 members now
Yes.
of this IDC, this Independent Democratic Conference.
Right. So I started it in 2011. There was 4 of us. And the idea has been to deliver results, and we've been able to do that.
So how do you, I mean, you're a member of the Rules Committee, which is like tremendous. I mean, you're so young, and I think you're the youngest one ever on the Rules Committee.
Okay.
I mean, is that because of the IDC? Is that
I think it's because
only the
we look
senior,
at
because only, in my experience, only the senior members of the Senate got to be on, like the Bill Larkins of the world,
Sure,
got to
sure.
be on the Rules Committee.
Yeah. Well, I think you definitely still have the seniority, but I think things are changing too in terms of the way that we put people are put into leadership. They show that they can handle it and do things. Whereas it's a mixture of seniority and talent, I think.
Did you choose the Consumer Protection Committee to be chair, or did they tell you this?
It was something that I had pushed for.
You
It
did.
wasn't, one of my great joys was chairing the Mental Health Committee. I got to do that a few years ago, and I still am on the Mental Health Committee, and that's a real passion of mine. And if I had a choice, I would rather do that. But consumer protection, and I'm still active in the Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Committee, and it's a real passion of mine.
Why is that a passion?
Because I see it as something that you can really help people, and you can
but
really make a difference.
But anything personal in your life?
Well, my aunt was developmentally disabled. She passed away before I was born, but it was instilled in me that idea, and the opportunities then were just so really horrible compared to today's standard.
Sure,
And you think about how you can make this progress and really understanding the issues that people are going through. So you got mental health,
Right.
and then you have developmental disabilities, and so vast issues and so many different challenges. But there are things, I think, if you really focus in and you can really try to understand the issues and then take it to what I do in terms of legislate and say, okay, well, where can we move these things
So do
forward?
you feel you made a difference?
I think I did, yeah.
With what?
Well, quite a few things. I mean, one of the things we were able to do is, now this year we finally got the living wage for direct service providers, which is extremely important. That means.
I never understood that terminology, direct service providers.
So what that means,
does
that's
that mean?
basically the people, the caregivers, the person that works with some of our most vulnerable populations to do the daily charges in terms of getting people dressed, bathing them, helping them with just things that we take for granted, going to the bathroom, brushing our teeth, things that a lot of people, unfortunately, just don't have the ability to do on their own. So imagine that type of work, right? You have someone that has dedicated their life and their career towards helping our most vulnerable populations, and then these people were getting paid sometimes minimum wage. And so then we ask ourselves, when we talk about better outcomes in healthcare, and we see sometimes where neglect would happen in our most vulnerable populations, and we say, well, these people are having to work 3 jobs to support their family, that's not right. And if we can get more experienced people to stay in the system to work through, that's a better outcome for everyone. So it's like penny wise, pound foolish. I think if we can pay our direct service providers, those direct care individuals, a living wage, that's going to make a huge difference because they'll be able to support their families, stay in that field, have the longevity, less turnover.
So what's the living wage, $15 an hour?
It depends where you are in the state.
Well,
It's a formula, yes. So the other thing that we were able to do is when you talk about the developmentally disabled population, one of the good deals that we have with the federal government is it's a dollar for dollar match. So the investments that we make in Medicaid,
Right.
in helping people with developmental disabilities, is matched by the federal government,
As
which
we-
is not
as-
true in other issues.
As we tape today,
Yes,
we don't know what the
Right.
current administration
Right.
is going to do in Washington.
very uncertain.
Okay.
One of the things that I have a saving grace on is that, you know, the Affordable Care Act, we've been able to do a lot of good with the Affordable Care Act in New York State. And I think you watch these pundits on TV from around the country that are talking about things that really have no place in New York. And we've been able to benefit from it. We've been able to expand programs. A perfect example is the Elderly Pharmaceutical Insurance Coverage Program. That's the EPIC program that allows people to obtain low-cost prescription drugs. We've been able to increase the income eligibility from $35,000 a year to $75,000 a year, allowing for thousands of more seniors to qualify for low-cost prescription drugs. Now, we were able to do that because we were able to leverage changes in the Affordable Care Act. Because a lot of the services that the Affordable Care Act required, New York was already doing.
And
we
that-
were just picking up a larger portion of the tab.
So-
Now the federal government is paying a lot more for these services, so New York was making out well. Now, the Republicans kept saying, hey, day one, we're repealing the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
Well, now we're 100 days later, that hasn't happened, thank goodness, but New York has more to lose than any other state. But I bring up that example. There's other issues, the reinvestment in our community. You know, whenever a bed closes in one of our psychiatric institutions, there's a level of funding that has to go into the community to support that. So we were able to raise that threshold. So when that does happen, that there's these community supports. We're moving from an area of institutionalization to getting people more in a less restrictive setting.
Okay.
So those are some of the issues. Yeah.
So I have a few other topics. So with consumer protection, what's your number one priority with consumer protection?
Well, there's a lot of things because
I
it's
know
so
there are,
broad.
but
But
just-
one of the things right now is just the digital consumer protection, right? Right now there's a lot going on with some of the changes in what these telecommunication companies can do, your internet service provider. So right now it's pretty remarkable. There's been some loosening of the restrictions because of the Republican-led Congress, where they're basically allowing the internet service provider to now sell your data. That means they can basically take all of the data that you've ever done on your computer, figure it out, and sell that data off. There's some unforeseen consequences with that. That's just one example of something that I think we can step up in New York and protect people
And what
and
do
make
you
sure.
do?
Well, there's things that you can do in terms of outlawing it in New York State, that type of sale
But
of data.
it's digital. I mean, it's nothing tangible.
Another issue
How do you
is
know?
is a breach of privacy, right? If there is a compromise with your data, there's only certain instances where that company would have to notify you that your data has been breached. So things like your email address, issues like that, if they were able to compromise that, it's not, we're trying to pass legislation. Actually, we passed it today in the committee where it's updating that notification of a data breach, that you would be notified of that.
Okay.
So there's so many issues. And then you could talk about consumer protection with utility companies,
Right.
which is a big issue, and water quality.
What about cable?
Cable. Well, what do you mean?
Well, we have a issue in New York.
In terms of like a utility?
Well, cable, thinking of it as a utility,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, when you talk about the cable, the franchise fees, okay, that are, it's on your bill, it's a few dollars here or
Yeah.
there. People are cutting the cord, so they're going more of the satellite and other video distribution that's not wired.
Right.
So the municipalities are losing money, hand over fist, for the in receiving this cable franchise fee. When it was first instituted, they had no, there was no problem because there was only cable TV. You didn't have dish TV
Right,
and other
right,
satellite venues. Roku is another one. So now you got all these other, and they don't have to pay this franchise fee. So the municipalities are losing money. The public access and community media stations are losing money.
Right.
And it's something that within 4 years, this cable franchise fee may go away.
And
they're
that
gonna
means studios like this go away.
and studios like this, but also, you know, Clarkstown, Ramapo. I mean, they're going to have a real problem they're going to have a hole in their budget. You know,
Well,
City of Albany.
and you've seen that where these cable companies have invested less in studios like this.
Right.
It's something where other
So we have a
franchise agreements
consumer
design.
protection crisis upon us.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about that in terms, because you know much more about
I
this
will be
issue in
giving you
terms
some
of things we do.
paperwork
Yeah,
after this.
I'll work
Okay.
with you on that.
All right. And I also wanted, now, drugs are a big thing. Alcohol
Yeah.
and drug abuse is your committee. I didn't want to say drugs are a big thing with you, but
No.
it comes out the wrong way. Patrick's going to come over here and take you away if I don't behave.
Cut these mics now. No, but,
But you're on the heroin task force, you're
Yes.
on the task force of Lyme and tick-borne diseases, you know, so, I'm hearing that heroin, the opioid addiction, the heroin's being laced with fentanyl.
right,
Which
it's a
making
synthetic opiate, yes.
so much more dangerous.
Right. Well, here, the stats are alarming, right? Right now, the leading cause of accidental death in New York State is an opioid overdose.
Really?
Now, when you look at the numbers, right, you see that you have prescription opiates, which is like oxycodone, which has been on the market since the late 90s, really, and you've seen a proliferation since then. Since 1999, over 165,000 Americans have lost their lives to an opiate overdose. It's dramatic. Now, more people are fatally overdosing on prescription drugs than they are heroin. So there's heroin and opiate, and then there's other drugs, you look at other drugs that people OD on, many times it's a combination with an opiate.
And
60% of all overdose deaths now in the United States are attributed to opiates.
And this supersedes what Narcan can do
Well,
in terms of bringing people back.
Yeah, so the fentanyl is another layer, and naloxone, Narcan can still work. It's an opiate antagonist, but you need a higher dosage when you're dealing with these synthetic opiates. It's been remarkable because what happens is the opiates are just so addictive, right? And what they do is basically sit on the receptors in your brain. And what happens is the reason why it's so deadly is because it basically blocks communication with your brain to the rest of your body. So you basically stop breathing. And what happens is if you don't get naloxone, that opiate antagonist, into someone's system, basically what it does, it knocks off the opiates that are sitting on the receptors in your brain. And that's what revives people. Now, what we found is most EMTs, we used to do a 2 milligram dosage, and it's a nasal spray, and you just spray it in someone's nose. What we found is now they have to do 2 doses every time. So we're looking into, there's another manufacturer on the market that I would like to get more widely distributed, because the naloxone that we use now, it's a vial, which you can inject into someone. That's how it was done for years. You attach an atomizer, which makes it a spray, so you just spray it in someone's nose. So less intimidating. But you do have to put it together, spray it in someone's nostril. The other one that we have now, it's just already in there. You just push a button, and 4 milligrams, one nostril. You don't have to do both nostrils.
Because the seconds that it takes to put that together is
you're talking about seconds, yeah. So you would always, and I do these trainings. The next training is April 27th. We've trained hundreds of people. You get a free kit.
Where do you do the training?
I do it all throughout Rockland and Westchester County.
But personally, or you just
Well,
host
I team up with Oasis, and that's our
Office
drug and
of
alcohol.
Alcoholism, Substance Abuse Services.
There we go, very good. And we've got experts, and they'll come and they'll train people on how to use it. You leave an expert, you know more than you really need to, but it's a great education, and you leave with a kit. The other thing that we're trying to do is now do these take-back centers, because the DE, the Drug Enforcement Agency, is now telling us 50% of the people addicted to opiates get their first opiates not from a drug dealer, not from a pharmacist, they're getting it from someone's medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
It's amazing. 50% of the people addicted. It's crazy because the highest fatality rates are our younger people, 18 to 24.
I mean, it's almost like you have to put your prescription drugs where you put your guns.
I mean,
and lock it away like a gun.
The opiates are so addictive that people will do whatever it takes to get them. So it's a public health risk. So we're doing, this Saturday is actually our National Drug Take-Back Day. And I'm teaming up with some advocates in the community, and we're going to CVS in Bardonia.
Sunday.
Oh, yes. And yeah, it's the 29th, right? That is a Saturday, right?
Okay.
And so we're doing the Drug Take-Back Day. So we'll have to do it other days.
Yeah.
But the idea, I have a bill that would require the chain pharmacies to be a drug take-back center. So the Drug Enforcement Agency has already done regulations where pharmacies can be a drug take-back center.
Sure.
They just haven't done it. And this is such an issue that we really, there's so many things we need to do.
You know, you do have a pharmacist in the assembly, John McDonald.
Yeah.
So you can always get him on board with you.
Right.
And work with him. I do want to ask
one more
you
minute.
about the, do you have a problem in your district with getting reelected because of you're in the IDC and?
I don't think so. I mean, this is my 4th term. I think there's always challenges and always people that we're going to disagree. But at the end of the day.
Are there Democrats in Rockland that are just totally find it an anathema that you could be?
I think there's a
separate-
lot of misinformation,
Yeah.
and unless we clear that information up, people are upset. Something like, oh, you're working with Republicans
Yeah.
and voting with Republicans. I say, look at my record, and you will see.
John Flanagan made a very good point on the floor at the closing of the budget. Did you remember what I'm talking about?
What was that?
He said, we're not separate. Look at this. Only 4 people voted against that big ugly. on the budget bill.
Right.
Only 4 people. I said, we're all in sync. I said, you don't have this faction, that faction. 99% of the votes in the Senate
Right.
get passed either unanimously or
Well, yeah,
close
Mark,
to.
I mean, to speak to that, I
So-
think that unfortunately it's this polarization that you see in the political climate in the United States and in New York State.
Power grab.
Well, and it's
That
the
people
far
want.
left, the far right, and it's like they are so upset if you even talk to someone from the other aisle.
Well, I know.
And for me, I've always said, look, I'm only here to help my constituents
Right.
and to move our agenda forward. To just talk about it, I'm really not interested in that. I want to get results. That's why I was elected. But that's not too popular nowadays.
There are Democrats who feel that the only good Republican is a dead Republican, and there are Republicans
Sure.
who feel that the only good Democrats are dead Democrats.
Right.
And I have experienced this because I've been with the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and I worked on Golisano's Independence Party campaign. So I've been in the back rooms of all 3, and I'll tell you,
Yeah,
there's some
And I can
visceral-
appreciate that. You know, there's hyper-partisanship, but it's when it comes down to governing for the entire state of New York, you have to leave that behind because I know I'm a Democrat.
Well,
I'm a Democrat,
but-
but I know we don't have a monopoly on
But-
good ideas.
But is it uncomfortable that the Democratic chair of Rockland County is the daughter-in-law of a state senator?
I mean, there could be
Does that
some.
make you feel, or do you still get the Democratic endorsement from
Well,
the county, or?
It depends. You know, there's times when I haven't gotten the endorsement.
Right,
But that's why I speak directly to the people,
people,
in my
and you win,
community.
and
Yeah.
you're successful.
And I think that
So
machine,
I'm not saying
politic
for that reason, I'm
is a thing
talking
that's
about-
dying.
Yeah, the machine politic, but does it make it uncomfortable for you when you got the mother-in-law of the Democratic chair in
Sure.
on the floor with you? Does she come over to you? And I'm talking about
I
Toby
mean,
Stavisky.
Yeah, we're cordial. We're cordial, but yeah, I think sometimes there's some other motives that people have, and that's what's unfortunate. Sometimes
But
it's
she's
not
not-
about hey, leadership. It's
You don't
about
go
who's
out-
the leader.
You don't go out to dinner with her, in other words.
Right? No,
You're just
not too
cordial.
common. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're cordial, but I mean, we've got a good relationship.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
just curious how that,
Yeah.
because that was an odd twist that I found. That
Yeah.
You live, but I just, put it together.
Right.
I had to ask you about it.
Yeah.
Because it's just,
You know, I try
Ironic how
to. You try to
it's
not.
intertwined.
People sometimes will take all this baggage with them. Any complaint that they've ever had with someone, and I find, especially in government, but anywhere, that rarely works. Right? If you're sitting there to negotiate something, you've got to leave all that baggage at home.
I always say
or
that, and I practiced
get rid of it.
Yeah, and I've
Yeah.
always practiced it. But
To say, hey, where can we see eye to eye? Where can we agree on these issues? And that's where, when we talk about issues like the opiate addiction problem, we talk about helping people with mental illness, the developmentally disabled community, protecting consumers' rights, water quality. I mean, these issues, we need to
And-
find common ground, or else
and-
people are suffering.
And even on the local level, when I talk to people who want to run for mayor of a city or whatever, I say there's no Democrat or Republican way of plowing the snow
Right.
and cleaning the streets and paving the streets. There's no Democrat or Republican way to do that. So, you got to be the mayor of all people
Sure.
at that point. So I don't even know why they have, on the local level, there's no real philosophy between Republican and Democrat. It's really on the national level that you get that partisanship.
Sure.
So
Okay,
anyway.
I think we're
okay.
out of time. But we're going to thank the center for doing such great
Thanks
work.
for having
Take
me.
care of the Jewish community, also in Ramapo also. I mean, you have a big contingency.
Yes.
We didn't really talk about that, but
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
we didn't talk
Rockland
about
County.
Muncie. Oh, let's
Yeah.
do another half hour on this. No.
We have the Rockland County is the largest Jewish population per capita in the nation. So it's something we're really proud of. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, like Mark says, we're going to have you back and talk about that. But in the meantime, you're doing great work and do it with success.
And you have
Thank
a
you.
great staff, so kudos
Yes.
to you for that continued success.
Thank you.